I'm just going to take this time to tell you that my review is actually going to be delayed by a couple days, a couple weeks, maybe a month, a year. Screw it, I'll do it now. Welcome to Real School, the film channel hosted by a guy who actually went to a school for the gifted, but the only mutant power was social awkwardness. I'm your host, Michael Wynn Johnson, and today I will be reviewing The New Mutants. As you're watching the video, if you enjoy what you see, please give it a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Despite what you may have heard about the franchise, despite what you may have heard or eventually might think of The New Mutants, the fact of the matter is, as bad as it has been at times, there's always something you can take away from it. There's always something we can learn. Not a lot of people have realized, or at least acknowledged, that this is the first death of a cinematic universe. And we're not talking about Universal's dark universe that never got off the ground. For 20 years, we have had X films, X prequels, X sequels, X spin-offs. And here it is, the first death of the first cinematic universe. Feels like half of that time we were just waiting for The New Mutants to be released. And in those 2 decades, we've seen some stellar filmmaking. We've seen some not so stellar filmmaking, and we've seen some safe filmmaking. Now, what do I mean by safe? Well, not willing to take a chance at all with the properties. Dare I say, formulaic. If things are profitable, studios will never mess with that profit. Who would? But Fox, to their credit, and they don't often deserve credit, we're willing to try things with the X-Men franchise. Dare I even say trendsetters? No, probably not. I wouldn't go that far. But they have taken chances. Think about putting 2 generations of the same character together in X-Men Days of Future Past. Brilliant, inspired, fantastic film. Deadpool paid off, Logan paid off, and now New Mutants? No, I probably wouldn't go that far this time either. This was such a missed opportunity because when people saw the trailer, they thought, okay, they're going in a different direction. They're going with horror. No more of that PG-13 stuff now that Logan and Deadpool has worked. A horror-infused Super X film. Great. Well, there was some horror. This is not a terrible film. However, it is extremely safe in so many ways. Director-writer Josh Boone went on record as saying this was the hardest PG-13 he could think of. Let me just say, as a guy who was taught high school, that Josh Boone would get eaten alive by 13-year-olds today if that's his idea of a hard PG-13. It's more akin to Supernatural and Buffy. Now, there's nothing wrong with those shows. I love them, but they're dark. They're not necessarily horrific. The shows on Netflix that these kids watch, the comic books that inspired them, hell, even the dystopia that's happening in their backyard is scarier than this movie. If you're choosing to make it PG-13, and I'm assuming it was the studio, of course, then that's fine, but the horror is going to fall flat. Plain and simple. Even 13-year-olds who are watching this movie aren't going to be scared by PG-13. And that's not only a wasted opportunity in terms of going in the direction of other genres, but it's a wasted opportunity in terms of these characters. This is essentially Danny Moonstar's story, and I think that's fantastic. Blu Hunt, the actor who played Danny Moonstar, did a great job. Josh Boone serviced the character well, but her powers kind of lend themselves to something much more horrific. So again, if you're going to use Danny Moonstar and you're going to tease the horror, why not go all the way? Now, I don't blame Boone for his directing, but I will blame him for his writing. It was evident to me as a fan of X-Force and New Mutants that Boone did in fact know these characters, as if he's clearly read the source material, but I felt with all of the characters he either went too far, as in they were too much of an extreme of the character in the comic books, or much like the horror, he didn't go far enough. Maisie Williams was fantastic as Wolfsbane, but sadly that was about it in terms of getting the character right, or at least finding the proper balance. I thought that Charlie Heaton and Anya Taylor-Joy coming in was inspired casting, but Cannonball was so underused, almost muted or neutered, and the fact was that I found Magic at times almost insufferable. I will admit, it's super nitpicky, but you know what? I want to see the characters that I love done properly. That's what we all want when we see comic book adaptations. But it's indicative of the larger problem that I already mentioned. It's safe. Boone borrowed heavily from some already previously established classics. You take, for example, the 5 teenage dynamic of The Breakfast Club. The we think we're so different, but in the end, we're not so different kind of dynamic. Also borrowed from Nightmare on Elm Street or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And the problem with that is, when you piece all of these films together, they don't quite mesh. And he did that again because he knew it would be safe. The one thing that is super safe is just how predictable this film is, and I think that has a lot to do with borrowing from other movies. So you've seen these arcs before. You know where this is going to end up. At least even every little bit of the story seems predictable because it's familiar. Now, the one thing that Boone did that wasn't so familiar but is great was the fact that he continued on with same-sex relationships. There is a same-sex couple in New Mutants, and I think that's fantastic for today's audience and for PG-13 because it's the 21st century. See what I was saying? There's always something you can take away from it. Being an uninspired film feels that way. It feels longer than it is. It feels predictable. It feels dull. It feels like something you can miss. It is not the worst X-Men film, that's for certain, but it is sadly kind of a death whimper to the franchise, and that makes it a burn it. Poll question: now that the Fox X-Men films are finished, what was your favorite? As always, leave your answers in the comment section below. But until next time, school's out. Hey Real students, thanks for watching. If you want to subscribe to Real School, click that round Real School logo right beside me. Also click that damn notification bell so you're aware of all of Real School's new content. You can follow me on Twitter, and of course, if you get anything out of Real School, you can always give a little back. Just click the link in the description below or the button down there, and you can become part of my Patreon team.